everybody, so welcome to week 4, so it seems to have gone really quickly, of our inversion course. Now just a reminder, it's really important to continue to practice the exercises from week 1 to strengthen the core and strengthen the muscles below the shoulders and the ability to lift your body, your lower body. Now we're coming to handstand, and handstand is for most people the hardest inversion because you have less of a base. So in headstand you have your head and your hands on the floor, you can make a tripod or interlace, and then in forearm balance you have your forearm stand, so you've got more of a base in those inversions. So handstand tends to be a little bit more difficult for most people. So you can see that in my practice, I'm very stable in headstand. I could do almost anything upside down. I'm less stable in forearm balance, and then I'm even less stable in handstand. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways to prepare to continue to build strength in the arms. Actually, one main way to prepare, building strength in the arms, but also starting to bring you into an inverted position. And this is a really good thing to practice, particularly if you've got some fear around turning upside down. It's quite strong, it requires a lot of strength. You're going to actually walk your feet up the wall and have your legs at a 90-degree angle, and that's really important. So the legs shouldn't be high up, they should be parallel to the floor. And the way to do that, the way to mark that out, is to sit against the wall that you're going to work against, and then see if you can bring your hands where your feet are. I know if you can't quite reach, that's fine, just get them to be a little bit further forward. Keep one hand there, and then take the legs behind, bring the other hand down. Now try and get your hands to be about shoulder width apart, and really spread the fingers nice and wide so you've got a nice strong base. And then see if you can begin to walk the feet up the wall, and you're trying to bring your legs so that they're parallel to the floor, so not high, this is too easy. You actually want them probably a little bit lower than you think. Stay there for a few breaths and then come back down. Good. So it's one of those things that looks easier than it is. It is really strong. It really helps to build up the strength in the arms and the shoulders, and it also starts to get you used to being upside down, so it's particularly useful for people who are a little bit worried. Now if that feels easy, you can start to work with some jump ups, and initially again, if you're a little bit worried about handstands, just have a play. So bring the hands on the mat and just jumping the legs up and maybe back down. Just do that a few times. So initially don't worry too much about alignment points. If you're a little bit fearful, just get this feeling of jumping up. Now once you're happy doing that, I want you to think a little bit more about alignment, and we're coming back to what we talked about with all the other inversions, that you need to stack up the joints. So basically, if you start kicking the legs up when the hips are really far behind the shoulders, gravity is always going to pull you down. So what you need to start to think about is having the jump up when your hips are directly above your shoulders. Now you can get a bit of momentum as long as the jump up happens when your joints are stacked, which takes just practice, knowing when that is, so it's something that over time becomes easier to gauge how far you can go back to get momentum to bring you back at that point and stop at that point. So your jump up becomes a little bit lighter, so it might look something like this. So I'm stacking my shoulders over my wrists, and then it's easier to then jump up and bring my hips above my shoulders. And maybe you can have a little play here. Take one foot away from the wall, the other foot away from the wall. Pause. Good. Now, I haven't done it last time, but it is quite good just to take a brief child's pose, just to let the energy settle. So I hope you sort of saw that I was stacking my joints, so I was stacking my shoulders over my wrists, and then obviously once I'm upside down, my hips over my shoulders. So one of the compounds is to really arch the back, and then of course you're out of alignment, so you really need to draw the rib cage in. Now this stacking the shoulders above the wrists initially is super important. If you're kicking one leg up, I'd like you to practice kicking up the other leg as well. So for me the other leg is hard, so I'm just going to demonstrate to you. I might not get up, but it's better to try both sides. Make sure you get a bit of a balance. Don't always just do your stronger side. So again, I'm stacking my shoulders over my wrists, and again it's a lighter jump up. And again, maybe take one foot away, maybe the other foot away. Try not to arch your back, and then come down. So you can see that that side's a little bit harder for me. I was a bit naughty. I think initially I used to just kick my easier leg up first for probably years actually, if I hasten to admit, but I've more recently started to work the other side. Now if kicking up one leg is easy, what you could do to challenge yourself is to bring yourself closer to the wall, so the fingertips touch the wall. It's much harder because you can't swing back and forth so much, so there's less space, which means you're relying more on your core and less on momentum. You have to really try it to know what I mean by that, but basically you would have your hands, fingertips by the wall or almost by the wall, and then you have to slightly tuck your chin in as well to come up. Now this is a good variation because you're in a much straighter position. You could have the heels against the wall, maybe flex the feet, draw the rib cage in, so you're in that nice perfect alignment, and maybe come off the wall for a few seconds and then come down. So one of the things that I forgot to say at the beginning, I'm just going to say it now because it's fine to say it now, is one thing that you need to be able to do in order to do handstand is actually be able to stretch your arms up and be in that straight line. So this is a handstand, standing up. Now I'm sure that most of you can do this, but there will be people who will not be able to do this, and then practicing handstand, they can do some of the preliminary work, but actually coming in the handstand won't happen if someone can't extend their arms more than this far, for example, so they could do lots of arm stretches to open. Now the next stage would be to jump both feet up at the same time. So you've got that bunny hop. I'm going to come away from the wall a little bit, but I'm going to be fairly close, so somewhere between the two. So again, stacking the shoulders so they're over the wrists. You can see I don't actually take that much momentum, and then jump up and maybe extend the legs along the wall, maybe take one foot off, maybe the other. Again, see if you can balance for a few seconds and then come down. Again, remember to occasionally have a little child's pose in between. So that looks easier than it is. It's jumping both feet up at the same time, so you're really tucking the knees in. And you can practice this when you do your sun salute. So when you jump back, sometimes just maybe you have a little tuck in with the knees and shoot the legs back. And we often do that in my vinyasa classes, and we do the one-legged version as well. Now, if that's all fine, or actually if you can come up and you're quite happy up there, another way to work your handstand is the opposite way round, is to come down with core control. And the easiest way to do that is by having the knees, drawing the knees into the chest and coming down really slowly. It's just a way to work your core, and you're coming down instead of up, but you're working very similar muscles. So you're reinforcing the strengthening that you need for handstand. So I'm going to come up with both legs and then draw the knees into the chest and come down. So again, I can't say this enough. Shoulders over wrists, and then jump up. Good. Now this time you can straighten your legs first if you like, but I want you to think about drawing the knees into the chest and come down really slowly. Now you could see that I was slow at the beginning and then it got harder. I haven't actually practiced this one for a long time, but you're going to lose it at some point. But for as long as you can, see if you can just you know, draw everything in, come down with control for as long as you can, and then lose it. Now the other thing that I would say that is quite important to do is to do a handstand in the middle of the room. I don't do the flipping over anymore because I've had some issues with my back and it's a little bit risky. So especially after a certain age, I think you do have to be careful with things like that because you're not as your joints are not as forgiving. So, but I do handstands in the middle of the room, and I just hop up with one leg and then hop back. It's quite good to teach yourself to do that, so you're not relying on going so far that you would need the wall, if that makes sense. So you're backing off quite a bit. So I'm just going to pull my mat away from the wall a little bit. So it could look something like that. So if you're doing, say for example, the sun salute, inhale to extend, exhale fold forwards, inhale half lift. Now you would have your hands a bit further forwards than the feet, shift your weight forwards, so shoulders over wrists. If I bring my right knee in this time, left leg up. Okay, so that was a bad one, so I'm going to go away from the wall a little bit more. So right knee in, left leg up, and then exhale plank. So it's just, as soon as the wall's there, you just tend to rely on it. So I'm quite happy to show you mistakes because I think they're always part of our practice. Now the only other thing that I wanted to add, and I'm just going to add this as a challenge, it's fun, I'm not that good at it, I've only just started practicing this. It's a sort of a wide-legged handstand, and then you come into the splits. So just like I said, I'm not that good at it, but it's something to play with for those of you who feel a little bit stronger. So for this one, you'd want to be quite far away from the wall, and maybe almost a leg length away. And then let's go up with one leg first, and then see if you can come into a wide-legged handstand. Good. Now you're going to try and bring the foot through, slide it through, and then come into splits. So if I do that on the other side, so again, trying to lift out of the shoulders, and just have a little play. So of course with the handstands as well, you can do wide leg, so you could come up wide-legged, or you can come up straight-legged and then take the legs wide, so you could have a little play with wide-legged. So there's lots of little ways that you can play with handstand once you're happy and you're comfortable being upside down. So you've noticed that for most of them I'm looking forward, so looking forward helps to balance out the weight a little bit, so you can actually use your head to help you balance. The most important thing is shoulders over wrists when you jump up. Obviously it is harder than headstand or forearm balance, but it's your head and neck are completely free. Has very uplifting quality. I really like to bring handstands in right away at the beginning of my practice, and I always feel like it's particularly useful for when my energy is really low. A nice way just to have a little play, if you like, a playfulness. So just remember to practice the stages that work for you. So keep practicing headstand, forearm balance. If you're not doing headstand or forearm balance and doing one or the other, that's fine, but it's good to practice a couple at least alongside each other. And then when we meet on Saturday at 2:30, if you could work with whichever variation of handstand. So the beginning would be the walking the feet up the wall and maybe trying to jump up, and then in the middle somewhere where you're up but you're working with slightly different variations, and then the more advanced version where you're quite stable and your variations become a little bit more challenging. Okay, namaste, thank you.